Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about the leaks that we had over the weekend and what we might be able to expect from our new champion, Lilia. Now, that name is not confirmed, of course. A lot of this stuff is not confirmed at all, but I did want to talk about it a little bit and say, hey, here's what we might be able to expect from this new champion that'll be coming forward. Now, the sources I have for all the information I'll be talking about today will be linked down in the description below, but they are Riot's champion roadmap that they released a couple weeks ago, and a potentially leaked splash art for the new champion that was making the rounds over this weekend. So if you're interested in looking at any of those to see where I'm making these assumptions from, they will be linked down in the description. First and foremost, though, Lilia is likely to be the champion's name, and the leaked splash I do think is legit. I know sometimes we see content, especially if we think it might be leaked, and it doesn't seem very accurate, but this one, the quality is high enough and the character design seems close enough to what Riot tend to put out that I do regard it as likely the actual splash art for the champion. The other reason I think it's probably legit is that the event that Riot have coming out soon is the Spirit Blossom skin line. Now, they did spend a lot of time this weekend as well talking about that skin line and how they went about designing champions for it. Well, what would be a better new champion for that to help usher in that skin line than Lilia, who is sort of this frolicky, flowery jungler who's likely going to have an inclusion in that skin line. We also know that this skin line is likely to be of a similar aesthetic because of Ornn, whose skin was spoiled earlier this year in the State of the Skins video that Riot put out. So I find it very likely that Lilia will be a part of this event, and that her launch skin will likely be a Spirit Blossom skin. And so I don't think the splash art that was leaked is going to be her skin splash art. I think that Spirit Blossom is a little too close to what it possibly could be, but definitely that is going to be her default appearance, and the skin will be coming sometime else. Now, talking a little bit more about the actual leaked splash art, because I think there is a lot of information we can get from it. Now, obviously, I'm sure TB Skyan and other League of Legends YouTubers have already done content on this, but so I don't need to go too far into it, but definitely an interesting design. She is sort of this deer centaur, which I was not expecting. I was expecting something more akin to Greenglade Caretaker from Legends of Runeterra, for those of you who are interested. But instead we have a centaur, which I do like, as it does set her apart from Soraka a little bit more. I think very clearly Riot have decided that, hey, these sort of Color Riot Disney-esque champions that we've been putting out are quite popular. People really do like them, and I like them as well. I do think we get a lot of very serious champions, a lot of champions that have very grim designs or that are a little bit more traditional fantasy. So I do like that we're getting some sort of bubbly champions in here, like Lilia, Zoe, Neeko, Yuumi. They're all good inclusions. I do like that Riot are making more of an effort to put them out, and honestly, the more they show up, the more natural they'll feel in League of Legends as inclusions. Zoe naturally felt really weird when she first came out. A lot of people were like, how dare you put Disney in my League of Legends? But she starts to feel a little bit more reasonable when you look at, like I said, Yuumi and Neeko, and even now potentially Lilia. So I do quite like the design. I think it's very interesting, and I can't wait to see what her skin's going to look like too, as like I said, I think there's a lot of overlap between Lilia's sort of base thematic and what she might end up having. So we'll see what they end up doing with Spirit Blossom at the end of the day. Now, specifically gameplay-wise, Riot have confirmed that Lilia is a jungler, and that she is intended to be a mid-range skirmisher, which is very unusual, as obviously the other sort of Riot champions that we've seen have been more supportive. Obviously, we had Yuumi, who is a support, literally, and then Zoe and Neeko, who have had some sort of interesting mechanics in their kits, but haven't been just straight-out damage. Now, if you're struggling to remember what a skirmisher is a champion class that Riot have talked about that is intended to be very high damage and high mobility, but low defenses, and has to rely on very specifically timed windows in order to avoid taking damage and going down in fights. Yasuo is a great example of a skirmisher. He has high mobility, he has very high damage, but outside of Wind Wall and potentially getting a reset on his passive with his ultimate, he doesn't have any other defensive options. So he has to be very careful about when and where he presses W in order to not die in fights, because if he gets locked down and wasn't able to press W, well, he's just going to die in short order. So that is the kind of champion that Lilia is going to be, which is interesting, as I think a lot of people would be looking at Lilia and saying, well, that champion, has to be a support, right? And in fact, that was one of the first assumptions that I made was that Lilia will be a support champ, but that clearly is not going to be the case. She is going to be a champion that has some potential carry here, so I do quite like that. I feel like she'll end up playing a lot like Master Yi. Now, I believe the champion will be a lot more like, less like Master Yi in terms of like just auto attacking, but a lot more like a mage. If we look at the one skill shot that they teased for Lilia, it had a semi-global range, it shattered on terrain, and it kind of had a cone area of effect. Now, I'm uncertain as to if that is her sleep ability or not, but we know she has at least one sleep ability on her kit, which jury's out as to whether or not that will still include the drowsy then sleep mechanic that Zoe had, but if we look at Riot sort of recycling unique crowd control effects when they went from Ahri, who was the only champion with a charm, to Rakan, who is the second champion now to have a charm as well, they worked in exactly the same fashion, so I would not find it surprising if Lilia's sleep still had a drowsy effect and then a sleep effect. We'll have to find out what they decide to do at the end of the day. But we do know that they will have at least one sleep on the kit. I don't know quite yet if the sleep is that skill shot that we had previewed, but there's a good potential that it could be, and that's likely to be the character's only crowd control ability. Besides that, skirmishers, like I said, are defined by their mobility, their ability to kind of go in and out of fights, pick their opportunities, and go deal a ton of damage. Now, this is going to be really interesting for Lilia because she does feel like she wants to be slightly ranged. Riot have said she is a mid-ranged skirmisher, which they've confirmed recently on Twitter, is closer to Thresh or Aurelia's range of threat rather than someone like Veigar's range of threat. So potentially a melee champion, which would be really interesting as she kind of looks like she really desperately wants to be a ranged champion, but skirmishers tend to be melee, so we'll see. Again, there's only so much we can kind of guess at, but it looks like she wants to be a mage, and it looks like she wants to be more ability focused than auto attack focused, which is, I think, a little bit different from what we might consider the class to do. I would expect Lilia to have some form of dash. That's just what that class ends up having. There's really no way around it. Skirmishers need to have mobility so they can go in and out of fights. So we'll have to see how that ends up working out for Lilia. She has at least one sleep, and she'll likely have a good chunk of damage, especially sustained damage. So I would expect Lilia to have a spammable ability or a sort of Spellblade auto attack ability, sort of like Diana's passive, which gives her the cleave on every third auto attack and then bonus attack speed. Diana's actually a good example of a skirmisher, so I would not be surprised at all if Lilia has a similar mechanic on her kit. So that would be probably how I would try to design a champion, knowing what we currently know about Lilia and fitting the same goals that Riot want her to have. Now, as a jungler, of course, there's only so many assumptions that we can make, but it does mean that Lilia will need to be able to function on her own. It means that she probably has a fairly squishy early clear, as she is intended to be a squishy champion, but is the sort of champion, again, like Master Yi, where as long as they're able to scale up, get their items, and then be able to move out and help the rest of the team, that they can kind of carry, as long as they have other frontliners to tank for them and to set up the engagements that they can then take. So again, it's going to be a really interesting champion to see. I can't wait until we get more information about Lilia. The other thing I do want to talk about real quick is that there was some PvE content talking about Lilia. There were a couple of voice lines, one very sinister voice line, kind of saying, you know, hey, don't you want to actually hurt these people, Lilia? Which does seem at odds with her, like I said, very Disney-esque appearance, which generally those kind of characters aren't someone that you would consider would be like, yeah, go kill them all. So there's potential that the Lilia that we see is not very aggressive by default, but does have sort of places where she goes into a darker place and ends up wanting to hurt people, potentially because she's being tempted by this mysterious voice that we hear. That would be really interesting, and I could maybe see this champion sort of change states. So go from this sort of dreamy, whimsical Lilia into a more darker nightmare Lilia. That would be really interesting to me, and it could imply how Riot are going to get her from the sort of Disney character into a skirmisher, which again is supposed to murder the hell out of people. So we'll find out. I do think it's going to be quite interesting to see how they decide to play around with Lilia's design there. The other thing to mention real quick is that Riot do have another event similar to Set on PvE, where there is a token that you can earn by doing something specific, and that will give you Lilia on launch. Now, this token in particular read, you found Lilia in the forest, which I think means you're going to have to do something in the jungle in order to see Lilia and in order to get this token. Again, we have no information how this token will be earned, and Riot are likely to not tell us how we're going to earn this token, but the point is that that will still be out. It will likely be, I would guess it'd go to live on this next coming patch, so keep your eyes open for that, as that likely will be going live. And so if you're looking to earn that, seems like a lot of us are going to be playing some jungle games in a hope of finding that particular token. Anyways, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you all so very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on Lilia down in the comments section below. Would love to hear what you guys think she might be like on release, especially if you guys have seen any other leaks. Let me know, and we can go ahead and talk about them down in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.